Hi everyone. Hi. Hi, come on, don't be like my first year students. Hello everyone. That's it, a bit more enthusiasm. Okay, so I too want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land and pay respects to any elders past and present, and as well any elders future, which I think is really important. So my name's James. When asked to do this keynote presentation, or this plenary presentation, I do what I usually do. I said yes with a great deal of excitement, and then I totally freaked out and decided that I didn't want to do it. And I realised this morning it was too late to pull out. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Shelley and Linda, and of course the wonderful Madeline for everything that they've done to get me here. So I'm going to talk about success, achievement and futures, but I think when you're talking about your success, achievement and futures, the best place to start is with your past. And I suppose the best place I want to start is when I was a sessional academic while I was doing my PhD. And it begins by looking at a garbage bin. Now, why a garbage bin? Well, I was coordinating a unit with about 400 students, and this was before Turnitin became the way that you submitted your assessments. So we're going back just on 9 years now. And they had to physically give in their assessments. So I went down to the room where all the assessments were submitted, and I had 400 assessments to collect and carry back with me. And so I was sort of standing there, and I kind of realised there's no way I can carry 400 assessments on my own. So what I did was I grabbed 2 recycling bins from the university, and I shoved them in. I picked up the assessments, and the bins were clean. I made sure that they were clean. And I just picked up the assessments, and I grabbed 2 full bins. And I grabbed these 2 full bins worth of assessments, and I was walking back to my little temporary office as I was a casual academic, and I was rolling them like this. And it was fine. It was going well until I got about 3/4 of the way there. Then I had to go up some stairs. And so I kind of sort of standing there like this, looking up, and then I decide, okay, what I'm going to do is I'll leave one of the bins here and I'll carry the other bin upstairs, put it in my office, and yeah, right? It was bin collection day. Don't ever leave a blue bin on bin collection day. Anyway, suffice to say, I got it back to my office, came back out, and the other bin was missing. Ran downstairs and found one of the very nice cleaners walking away with it, and then had to try and convince him that it wasn't some sort of weirdo stealing the bin, that actually it was full of assessments. And I think there is something in that story that kind of summarizes my experience as a postgraduate student trying to be an academic. And I thought to myself, well, you know, when I met with my supervisor, we tended to have one of 5 conversations. And in that bin story, you'll probably see why I had these 5 conversations. The first conversation revolved around I'm a fraud. So I kept on saying to him, I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. People are going to discover that I don't know what I'm doing. And so this morning, as I was boarding the flight, and I rang Alex, my partner, and I said to her, I don't think I can do this presentation. It's going to be really bad. I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. She reminded me that I've been saying that for 11 years now. The second conversation is I have writer's block. And that's a good one because I always use it whenever I never got around to doing any writing. And my students use it on me now. And it's one of those things where writing is one of the most exposed things that we do, and it's incredibly challenging. And often you look for excuses of not to write. And the one I get most frequently from my students is, and I kind of deserve it because that's the one I use most frequently, was that I have writer's block. The third one is I understand, was a conversation I had with my supervisor, when in reality, I never really understood what was going on during my PhD. And this is one thing I see with really sharp students, that often they're too scared to ask, they don't know what's going on. What they rather do is just pretend they know what's going on, and I call it smart person syndrome. And this is something that happened, you know, I think you see it in the bin story, that I had to carry these bins, and I was too scared to sort of ask if there was a smarter way for me to collect the assessments. The fourth conversation follows on from the I'm the fraud, I cannot do this. And the fifth conversation I often had was I want to change direction. And this again covers the idea that as PhD, one of the things about the PhD conversation, or one of the PhD or the Masters, and I'm responsible for the Masters of Research as well at my university, is students feel often uncertain about where they're going, what direction to take. So that's, I think, the student from my experience and the conversations I've had with students and my own experience has been this is the conversation, this is the sort of the challenges that students face. In addition, we're facing a very uncertain future. And I often with my postgrad students, with my undergrad students, sorry, when I lecture with them, I often put up this photo. And that's me, just in case you didn't recognize me. This is my iPhone 5. And in there, you can't really see it from up the back, is Australia's first mobile phone. And the reason I show that photo is because I let my students know that that mobile phone weighed 10 kilos, had a charge time of 8 hours, a talk time of 10 minutes, and Facebook was not on that phone, right? And it kind of freaks them out. And then I asked my students, what would you rather lose, your phone or your wallet? And most of them say they would rather use their wallet rather than their phone, right? So it's a dramatically changing world. And I think we need to, I think we need to recognise this. And one of my arguments is that universities are where record labels and newspapers were a generation ago, or even 10 years ago, where what we owned, what we had, what we produced was original content. We controlled it. But just like the news industry or the music industry, we are just one voice of many. And students are entering this world now where what they're sharing and what they want to share is in competition with all sorts of voices. And one of the questions I often ask my colleagues is, where will we be as higher education institutions in 10 years' time? And I heard a talk the other day where someone said that there's an estimate that 20% of global universities will cease to exist within a decade. 20%, 1 in 5. It's amazing. There's 42 universities in Australia. If we lose 20% of them, that's amazing. That will get down to 30. So this is a very, very uncertain environment we're now confronting. There's also an environment where I suppose knowledge is now mediated. This used to be knowledge transition, and it's gone from that to this. And also to this, where much of what we share or much of the knowledge that is produced and shared with students is often mediated through third parties, be it media, NGOs or corporations. So, what does a PhD mean in this time? What does a master's mean in this time? What does postgraduate work mean in this time? Are we just seeing degree inflation? Are we just seeing a process whereby what used to you'd be able to get a job once with just a bachelor's, you now need a master's, and what you needed a master's for, you now need a PhD. Are we just seeing inflation in this time? And that's a question I don't think, I think most of us will say, yeah, we are seeing this sense of inflation. So what does it mean for us? What does it mean for students entering this program? So, a PhD, and this is again something I remind my colleagues, was designed in Germany in the 1880s. Now, talking to many people around the world, and I do a bit of this, is that when I ask them what the PhD journey looks like for their students, they basically say, well, they enroll, they meet with their supervisors once a month, they hang out, they do research, and 3 years later they produce research. They produce a thesis. So, in other words, the PhD as it exists now, for many, is no different to the PhD that existed in 1880 when a PhD was originally designed. And it was designed solely for one purpose, that is, as the academic pinnacle, an academic pinnacle of someone's career. But imagine those dudes saw this, right? It's a radically different world. So what does a PhD mean? And as I said, in a time of disruption, in a time when the world is so radically different. And I think that's one of our challenges. One of our challenges here, and one of the challenges I pose, is what we do look like? And as we heard, I think one of the things we need to do is stop just adding it or making slight changes. I think we need to kind of start from a blank slate and think, what should the PhD, what should the master's, what should the postgraduate experience look like? Not just go, well, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I think this is one of the challenges I've taken to my university. So I should have said this, I've only been the Dean of the Graduate School since the 1st of January. And one of the things I have tried to do is actually challenge the university to reconceptualize what the postgraduate journey looks like. So, and my argument is the postgraduate journey or the PhD has not kept up. So what we know now about the PhD that we haven't known before. One is that research shows us that up to 50% of PhD students do not enter academia. And this is a massive change. Remember what I said when I said right at the beginning, PhD was the principal, the academic pinnacle of someone's career. Now only 50% of PhDs will go on into academia. We also know, the second thing that we know, is once positions in academia that only required a master's and or industry experience no longer cut it. You need a PhD. And we see that happening in many institutions. The second thing we know is that interdisciplinary skills are valued in industry. They're valued all over the place. But one of the challenges of a PhD or a master's program is often we force students to focus more and more frequently, to get into smaller and smaller focus points. And I'll tell you my own experience. My own PhD was looking at exchange systems around the world. So I was interested in what exchange systems occur will shape how exchange systems shape society. So for example, I was interested in barter systems and what happens when you move from, say, the ownership of a public institution to a private institution, and you no longer have a citizen government relationship, but a sort of a customer-client relationship. So I was interested in that type of thing. And I picked 5 case studies around the world, and they were all radically different case studies, from the Solomon Islands to the privatisation of hospitals, to privatisation of schools, to all sorts of different kind of case studies. And I gave a presentation to a group of academics at a conference one day, and afterwards a very, very senior experienced academic who I really, really liked came up to me and said to me, "Oh, James, I was very impressed with your presentation." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, that's great, I really appreciate it." And he said, "Yeah, it was really great." And I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "I'm just going to give you one piece of advice. Do not do exchange systems around the world. If you want to get a job in academia, my advice is look at microfinance in Micronesia in the 1880s. Right? And he goes, that way, anytime there's a conference in Micronesia or a conference on microfinance or a conference in about the 1880s, you'll get a gig. You're guaranteed to get a job, right? And so this is one of the challenges, right? Like we talk about interdisciplinarity, but I suppose the academic institution still expects you to focus. Okay. The third thing that we know is collaboration is highly valued. But again, most PhD students or master's students and our students often focus in on the individual, right? What they need to do, and we mark them and we assess them on that in that space. And the fourth thing is that there's a continued pressure to complete on time, and also massive pressure on finance. So how do we respond, and how do we try and promote success? I think traditionally universities have been very good at promoting knowledge, okay? And the PhD or the master's journey is one of, as you progress, you build knowledge. You undertake research and you produce knowledge, an original contribution to knowledge in our society. Well, this picture is wrong for this is wrong for one reason, because the PhD or the research journey does not look like that. It looks more like this. But during this journey, one of the things that we often focus our students on is producing new levels of knowledge. But what I think we need to also concentrate on, and what I think a lot of the work I'm doing at the moment, and not just me, but others, and which I do recognise, is that we also need to build skills and culture. And when I talk about culture, that is being able to thrive in a time of uncertainty, especially for those who are interested in entering the academic workforce. So uncertainty, I think, as I said at the beginning, is something that's defining all generations talk of uncertainty, but I think the pace of change of our current time, our current experience, is quite radical, and I think that's one of the things that we do need to concentrate on. The second part of that equation is a concept of skills. And I think that we also need to do is work towards building a broad set of skills beyond good research. I mean, excellence in research is only the starting point. It's not what we should be aiming for. So this is a model that I've been developing over the last sort of probably 5 or 6 years. Probably for the last 4 years actually, I should say. And it's looking at the different kind of, I'm not allowed, I used the word attributes once and I got into trouble for it because I wasn't allowed, apparently that's got a different meaning. So I call these proficiencies. What are the different proficiencies? And I do think that we need to start thinking about what attributes we need to develop in our postgraduate students. And I'll give you, I think, for me, I've put this under the bracket of the citizen scholar, the concept of the citizen scholar. And what I do believe, in summary, is that we're not only should we be producing excellence in scholarship, but also highly engaged citizens or highly engaged scholars. Scholars that do not only care about their research, but how that research can be applied and impact on society. And I think that if you look at traditionally what we do, and I will say that these slides are not available on your USB, but I will give them to you if you want them. I promise. All right. Anyway, so what I will say, I think when we look at the PhD or the postgraduate experience, we need to look at how we actually build these engaged citizen scholars that their research continues to actually have a positive impact on society. So I'll skip that. Okay. So what are we doing and how do we try and get to this achievement? And I want to talk about sort of 5 strategies I want to put to you to some of the things I'm implementing at the university, but things I want to float out to you to consider. Okay. The first one is a scaffolded journey. And I mentioned before about the PhD journey looking like it does in the 1880s. Well, this is a mapping I've done for most PhD programs around Australia, around the world. So what you get is first year, you do like this early confirmation that you're going to continue. Then you get a 12-month review of how much you've done. Then you do ethics. Then over here, you do a progress report. And then over here, you're expected to submit. So it's no wonder that, say, PhD students, and again, I'm talking about PhD students, but I think postgraduate students generally will get lost. So what I actually argue is that we need to actually build a journey that's much more scaffolded as we do in the undergraduate world. So these are some of the things that we're doing at the university, which again, I suppose it's stuff based on a lot of the research I've done, looking at sort of best practice, is lots of work before they begin. 3-month confirmation of candidature plan, and then a 6-month confirmation of continuation plan. We have our 12-month confirmation of candidature, again ethics, but then a career planning day, and I'll come back to that. And then our annual progress report. 6 months before a student's due to submit, they have to actually submit a section of their PhD or a section of their master's project, which actually is of a quality that we believe is of standard to be submitted. And then finally the submission process, and we're actually introducing a defense of the thesis as well, and I'll come back to that as well in a moment, why we're doing that. Now, associated with this is actually a number of tasks that a student must complete. So it's actually, like I said, it's a much more scaffolded journey. So it's not just go off and do what you need to do. It's actually, these are hoops you need to get through. Okay, second, career planning, and I mentioned that. So as I said, 50% of our students, 50% of PhD students will not get into academia. So where do they go? Well, we know that a lot of them will go into non-government organisations. Some could be anything from the World Bank to working for Oxfam. A lot of them will get into policy and government. Others are entrepreneurial or want to enter private industry. And so what we've done is, as I said when I said in here, we actually sit down both before semester and after semester and do a whole bunch of career planning. and say to them, okay, where do you want to go? And we have a series of experiences catered around for that. 3, communication, and this goes back to what I was saying before about the defense of the thesis. Knowledge translation, essentially, it's a fancy word, and I don't know if Michael's here. Are you here, Michael? Okay, no. Okay, so knowledge translation is basically, for those of you who, I'm sure that most of you know the term, but it's essentially basically, in its basic term, means being able to communicate complex ideas. And I remember my own experience in my first, as an undergraduate, I remember getting up and presenting on talking about giving a presentation on elasticity of demand, because my first degree was in economics. And there I am talking about elasticity of demand, elasticity of supply, and I'm going on and going on. And my lecturer at the time stopped me and said, okay, I want you to go back and I want you to present the same thing, but I want you to explain it to me like I'm your 16-year-old brother, right? I don't want you to dumb it down, I want you to make it accessible. And I think one of the big challenges and I find this, PhD students or master students as well, seem to find a resistance in this process of making things accessible, because it's almost like putting up the bricks of knowledge creates almost like a sense of legitimacy. And I think we need to break down these ideas that actually making things inaccessible makes you a better academic. Okay, and this is some model that I'm working with, which I'll skip. Okay, supervisor development. So I don't think that all the pressure needs to be on the students themselves. I think a lot of this also falls onto the hands of the supervisor. The supervisors are responsible for overseeing the journey, or the supervisory panel. And I think one of the things that we must get better with is supervisors being geared up to deal with this experience and being prepared for this changing nature of the research journey. And many supervisors, again, in my own experience, will treat their students almost like a little fiefdom. These are my students, these will do what I tell them to do. And I think this is deeply problematic, and I think, especially in the contemporary world, shouldn't be stood for. And within that, but we must acknowledge the fact that supervisors are carrying a deep workload, the old model of research, teaching, administration, and engagement. And it's a heavy workload. So within that, what we're also putting pressure on them is to say, well, we also expect excellence in supervision, but real supervision. Supervision that includes mentoring, supervision that includes guidance, supervision that includes career planning. But I think they see it as an added burden, but I think it needs to be embedded in the other processes of what they do. 4 is multiple mechanisms of feedback, and that goes back to this chart, this graph. And these are just at a minimum the process of feedback we have for our students, and we have and sorry, with a lot of these, the feedback is not just the supervisor or the supervisory panel. We're actually getting external people to provide the students with feedback. And I think that process of engagement and getting the students with engaging people is really important in actually assessing that journey. Okay, 5, defining expectations. We said, it's been said a number of times, Di mentioned as well, the experience of contemporary postgraduate students, the background is so diverse, the expectations so diverse, what they want to do next is so diverse. We heard everything from I'm just doing this because I want to know more about this area.
you.